Welcome to this first episode of the Sustainable Finance web series. Temperatures are rising globally, increasing the likelihood and impact of environmental issues such as extreme flooding, like we've seen recently in the summer of 2021 in Belgium, Holland, and Germany, causing billions of euros in damages. And today, it's still unclear if the affected areas will fully recover. We know that every tenth of a degree the temperature rises dramatically increases the likelihood of these extreme weather events in the future. And to avoid the worst case scenarios, we need to be climate neutral by the middle of this century. And to have a good chance of achieving this, we need to start acting today. That's why this decade is called the Decade of Action. But what does climate neutral actually mean? Well, climate neutrality refers to the idea of achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by balancing those emissions with those that get removed through the planet's natural absorption. In basic terms, it means we reduce our emissions through climate action. And we all have a role to play in this. You and the companies or organizations that you work for will need to actively work on this. That's exactly why we have created this exclusive mini web series to lead you through the journey. So let's get to it. During the course of 5 episodes, I will share some insights on several EU initiatives which intend to accelerate the transition towards a climate neutral economy. First of all, we will start with the bigger picture, the EU Green Deal. Then we will dive deeper on the main topic of this web series, the Sustainable Finance package, which can be split in several parts, but we will only dive deeper in the 2 most relevant ones for you, the EU taxonomy and the CSRD. And last but not least, it's time to act. I will give you some concrete actions you and your company can start taking today to position yourselves for success in our future climate neutral economy. But first, my name is Peter Jan, and I'm currently a senior manager at BrightWolves, an impact consulting firm focused on sustainable transformation, where I lead the sustainable transformation of finance and supply chain. The last 3 years, I've gained experience in the fields of sustainable finance, integrated reporting, ESG due diligence, and ESG strategy. And today, I'm also one of the few people in Belgium fully certified in GRI, and I'm currently FSA SASB Level 1 certified, and also on track to get fully certified in the nearby future. Prior to BrightWolves, I worked several years in the chocolate sector in various roles in finance and supply chain, but also worked in one of the big 4 management consulting firms, where I mainly focused on the energy and public sector. Well, in this episode, I will focus on the European Green Deal. This is the EU's plan to become climate neutral by mid-century. By 2030, however, the EU wants to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 55% compared to 1990 levels. It's also frequently called the Fit for 55 package. It's being put in place to limit the risk of environmental issues such as climate change, loss of biodiversity, water pollution, air pollution, and so much more in the future. And, well, exactly the future, that's what it's all about. Safeguarding our planet for future generations, which is becoming very clear by the increasing awareness on the topic in society. Just think about the climate strikes that have been going on around the world, organized by the youth. This younger generation, those who will be living the consequences of decisions we make today, and society at large are shouting for a systems change. Instead of being left vulnerable to the havoc climate change will cause around the world. But also public opinion is shifting, which is shown in the latest EU barometer, where Europeans consider climate change to be the single most serious problem facing the world. More than 9 in 10 Europeans believe that climate change is a serious problem. Nearly 1 in 5 Europeans, 18%, think that climate change is the most serious problem facing the world, slightly ahead of poverty, hunger, and other very important topics. This is the first time ever that climate change ranks first on this list, ahead of all the other global challenges listed. But not only public opinion is shifting, society and experts also see that climate change is one of the most important issues the world is facing right now. These experts of the World Economic Forum are seeing environmental issues rising the ranks of global risks by likelihood, but also by impact. In the latest risk report in 2022, 5 out of the 10 top risks which have been identified the most severe on a global scale in the next 10 years are environmental issues. Although short-term, other issues have priority, the experts agree that the risks increase over time. Moreover, all of these issues are very much connected. This is not new, of course. Awareness around the risks and effects of climate change have been increasing since the 70s, but has clearly accelerated these past few years, increasing also the necessity for legislation or policy to support society in this much needed change towards a climate neutral society. Not only climate action is needed, but we must also become more resource efficient or circular. At the end of 21, about 9% of the world's economy is truly circular, and there's evidence that this ratio is declining instead of increasing. And to cut global emissions and truly become a climate neutral economy, we must become circular. This transition affects the full economy and society and thus brings no risks, also opportunities. But let's focus on the risks for a second, such as physical risks. These are directly related to climate change, such as hurricanes or floods destroying a production facility or climate variability affecting a crop production. In other words, the increased intensity and duration of extreme weather events leading to damages to infrastructure and facilities. Transition risks. These are linked to the expected or even unexpected policy changes in the global transition towards a low carbon or climate neutral economy. Think about carbon taxes or new standards on energy efficiency. In other words, these will lead to a reduction in the value of investments, especially in carbon-heavy industries. Let's not forget reputational risks, which in itself is nothing new, but increased public attention adds a new dimension to this. Namely, increased risk associated to insufficient action in curbing greenhouse gas emissions. In other words, backlash from exposed greenwashing practices heavily impacting your brand's reputation. Therefore, it's important that policymakers activate a mix of carrot and stick measures to move all the companies and sectors in the economy. Luckily, the EU responded as one of the first regions on the world, namely already in December 2019, when they presented its initial idea, the European Green Deal. But what is the Green Deal? What's the scope of it, and why is it important to you? Well, it's a series of policy initiatives that support the goal of transitioning the EU towards a climate neutral economy. It's a truly impressive number of legislative initiatives that the EU is putting in place. And just to name a few, you have the European Climate Law, which is putting the neutrality target into law. You also have the extension of the emissions trading system, and extension with more industries including in the system, and currently it's already the biggest carbon market. Besides that, you have the idea about the carbon border tax system, which will most likely be introduced, and which is meant to counter the outsourcing of unsustainable practices to outside of the EU to be then imported back into the EU. You also have the Just Transition Fund, which was put in place, which will support the transition of all member states. You have strategies around farm to fork and biodiversity. And you also have the Circular Economy Action Plan. But there's also a plan of financing this transition as such, through strategies from green financing, but also a sustainable European investment plan of about 1 trillion euros. And in parallel, They are turning parts of the European Investment Bank into Europe's climate bank, which should enable public and private players to fund this transition, as all actors throughout the finance value chain will have to be on board. Overall, the EU Sustainable Finance Package is key to the delivery of the EU's ultimate objective, and it supports the need to reorient significant amounts of public and private capital into sustainable activities. Nevertheless, to make the right decision, the right level of transparency is needed on, let's call them, non-financial topics. That's why I want to highlight a few distinct parts within the Sustainable Finance Package, which is the EU Taxonomy, CSRD, which is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which actually amends an old directive, and an overall update of fiduciary duties. But more on that in the next episode. So let's recap. The EU Green Deal is an answer to the loud call for systems change by several types of actors: experts, civil society, youth, and also financial industry. The EU wants to be climate neutral by 2050, and the European Green Deal is the EU's flagship initiative to get this done. And it's not only about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it's about transforming the full economy and society. It's about drastically changing the key systems that define the way we live and work, produce and consume. And it's a multi-level, multi-stakeholder effort. Namely, we need all the actors on board and to follow through. First of all, you have the European Union, which creates the vision for the future. It funds this transformation. It foresees regulatory and enabling measures, and it enables innovation. Then you have the member states, which co-legislate within the European Parliament. They propose and implement recovery plans. They implement climate and energy plans and long-term renovation strategies. You have the regions within the member states, who use these EU funds smartly and utilize these new economic development strategies. You also have the individual cities. They develop local climate strategies and put these into action. But in the end, it's going to be the citizens, businesses, and civil society who will be crucial, as their behavior will support or not achieving the overall objective. Think about it like this. Our economy relies on society to drive it. Our society relies on a healthy environment to thrive. Thus, means that we can no longer view these three as distinct and unconnected. And with these final words, I would like to thank you for following this first episode. Speak to you soon and make sure to listen to episode 2.